Hello and welcome in. Today we are covering what's in a brand. What does it mean to be branded on social media, especially currently? This has changed a lot in the last 20 years. And so I want to break down what a brand is. And so that this is not such a mystery and such a struggle for people to try to understand within their social media and why it's important. Because the reality is, you are just one of a million posts that we're going to scroll past today. On the different platforms we're on, we're going to scroll past different people, different platforms, different media formats, pictures and graphics and video and blogs. And how do we make sure that we're remembered? How do you make sure I remember you? A consistent brand really pulls together all of your posts. So I might see your post a couple different times, a couple different places, but when they are branded and consistent, I start to connect the dots that it's the same person or the same company that is posting them. And this helps build that larger conversation with your audience over time instead of each of your posts needing to stand alone. It helps us recognize you faster, establish that relationship with your target audience, ultimately your prospective clients, and it helps build trust. Because you're never just this new thing we're seeing for the first time every time one of your posts comes across our page. But what is a brand? That's really the question, right? A brand is not a logo, business cards, hashtags, mission statement. This is where most new business owners will put their focus, thinking, and I've seen people do this, where they'll spend 3 to 6 months coming up with the perfect logo, and they've spent forever on their business cards, and they've got a mission statement. And these things are lovely and swell, but they're not the core of what it means to be branded online in social media. Your brand is the emotion people feel when they think of you or your company. Okay. It's the emotion people feel when they think of you or your company. This can be a very obscure idea to get your head around, but I find it is easier to understand what this means when we think about it in terms of actual physical space. So, taking for a second these three different living rooms, they all have chairs. They all have some kind of couch type situation. They all have a plant. They all have lamps, side tables, but they feel vastly different. You were to walk into any one of these rooms, you would feel very different in that space. That's your brand. It's the same thing with your brand. And thinking about in terms of imagery for your brand online, these three photos, for example, are all light bulb moments, right? They're all basically the same concept, but we get a different sense of what they're saying with no other context, with no other statement or quote or hashtag. There's nothing else giving any context to what these three pictures are saying. And yet we will often see this first one as a bright idea, the middle one is innovation in tech, and the third one as innovation in conservation. And it's just because of the types of photos they chose. So if you were trying to do innovation in tech, but you have the one with the plant, and I've seen people do this, but you have the picture of the light bulb on the far right there with the plant in it, it doesn't connect to what you're saying as a brand unless it's about tech with the environment. But if it's just tech, if it's just innovation in the office, if it's things that aren't with conservation, you have chosen the wrong photo despite it being the same imagery. So when we talk about really branding your online presence, that's what we're talking about. It's people won't remember what you said, but they remember how your brand made them feel. It's that emotion. Right? So people won't remember what you said. I promise you, I have this happen to me all the time. I had somebody last night say this. They're like, we didn't remember what you said exactly. I can't remember what video it was or what thing it was, but I remember thinking, oh, it's Jasmine again. That's great. I know she has this kind of vibe and this kind of knowledge. So they have this sense of how I made them feel, what my content brought for them in quality. They can't quote me specifically. A couple little things they could, but generally it's more about the sense of the brand. And you don't want to leave this to chance. And this is what a lot of businesses do. They say, well, we're going to post things for us. We're going to work on selling. We're going to work on getting people to our events, those types of content pieces. And they forget to curate and really be clear about what emotion and experience you want us to have when we hit your page or see your content. You don't want to leave this to chance, because that's how you end up going viral for the wrong thing. This is how you end up getting in trouble with your audience. You start getting pushback in your content because you haven't thought enough about the experience you are creating with your content, and you haven't been thoughtful enough about connecting with your audience. We actually watched this unfold in real time with the denim wars this summer. Not that either of these companies left anything to chance, but they both took different directions in their approach to connecting with their audience and the message they wanted to build. I personally believe American Eagle was expecting pushback and was playing on that viral piece as part of their exposure in their campaign. There's a lot of things that point to this. They were carefully curated in the type of content they created. They had the narrative, they had the tone, they had the visuals, and it all aligned. And then Gap responded similarly, but with their own versions. We've got two different companies that are basically selling 100-year-old, 120-year-old denim, right? It hasn't really changed dramatically in 120 years, conceptually, like the fabric, but how we style it, how we use it, how it means who we are when we associate with these brands has changed dramatically, and each of those companies leaned into it to the point that consumers started picking what team they were on. I'm with American Eagle. I'm with Gap. I'm definitely a Gap person. I'm with this, I'm with that. People chose which one they felt more aligned to. So the brand feeling comes in three parts. It's the tone, it's the voice, it's how you talk. Are you using swear words? Are you talking from an engineer to another engineer and using a lot of those types of terms? Are you speaking more generally to the public? Are you building conversation and curiosity? What is the real tone you're setting with your content? The second one is the narrative. What is your story? What is the story of your product? What is the story of the conversation you're having with us over multiple posts, over multiple months? And then the third is always going to be the visual. What is the best visual to express your brand, right? Going back to the living rooms, going back to the light bulbs I showed you a second ago, which one of those styles lines more with your brand, and making sure that that's consistent. It doesn't have to be so tight that it's boring, but you can't be throwing a whole bunch of different visuals all the time in different styles and going from cartoon to anime to realistic. We lose track of if it's really you. And when we see a new piece of content, when the visuals are too far apart, then the brand voice isn't there and there's no narrative, we no longer connect all your content and we don't know who you are, and you have not built a relationship with your audience. So this is why it becomes so critical, right? So how do you get your own brand? These are the questions I ask people when they start with me for my branding packages or for my social media packages. Describing your service in one sentence. I want that one sentence story. We want to really boil it down and tighten it up so that we are very clear exactly who we're talking to, the tone, and what product and service, what the transformation is with our products and services. All these are all questions you can take a second look at. What three words do you really want people to think of right off the bat when they think of your business? But the one that I really focus on a lot is, if you could only have people remember one piece of information, what would it be? They're going to see a lot of content today. They're going to see a lot of your pieces of content. What is the one takeaway you want them to have? You cannot sell thousands of narratives or hundreds of thoughts and a whole bunch of things, but those little pieces of, this is how we do this in our business, this is how we help you, these are results we've had our clients have. What is that through thread, that one main piece of information you want to make sure people understand about you or how you help them and what your offer is? That's really the piece you want to focus on when starting to build your brand. And then you match the narrative and the tone and the visuals to that one sentence, to that one piece of who you really are, that one piece of information. Okay. And again, this is really important for your social media, because otherwise you're just throwing posts at the wall. You start feeling overwhelmed. You start wondering why what you're doing isn't working, how to fix it. You don't know quite what to tweak. And it becomes really exhausting as a business owner. When you are clear in your brand, in the emotion and the experience you want to create for your audience, it takes a lot of that stress out, as it also helps you build that relationship and have higher converting content. So very powerful. The next slide is going to be moving past your I help statement. So be sure to hit follow so that you can catch that one. Most people, just to give you a quick example of what this is going to be, when they first start out, I'll say, so what do you do? And they'll say, I'm a website designer, which is fine, especially in a casual setting, but it's not as tight as what we're looking for when it comes to your brand messaging. So people often over a couple years are working with a business coach will end up with an I help statement. I help small businesses and startups with websites that bring in new investors and more clients. That's a lot to unpack, and it really centers the business owner versus the clients. So we want to go for something a little bit more specific, a little bit more bold, and a little bit more confidence infused. So the one I have here for an example is investor ready website in 30 days. And I really think if you sat with these three statements and you were trying to pick a website designer yourself, I think it's pretty clear which one you would choose based on the messaging alone. It also makes you think, which one of these do you want to be? Do you want to be the I hope person? Or do you want to be the one that has that bold statement at that next level down of strategy? So that's what we're going to break down in the next live. So follow along and I will see you there. Drop any questions you have in the comments.